So you're interested in diving a little bit deeper into your spiritual studies. Should you be studying on your own or do you need a teacher? And if you do need a teacher, should that teacher be enlightened or self-realized? That's what I'm going to talk about in this video, so stay tuned. Hi there, I'm Lisa ENGLES-WITTER, and welcome to my channel where I help spiritual seekers just like you to get non-New Agey answers to deep spiritual questions. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I put out new videos every week, and also be sure to click that notification bell so you get some notifications every time I put out my new videos. All right, I wanted to make this short video for you about spiritual study and finding a teacher because at some point, as a spiritual seeker, when you're on the path, if you become really serious about it, you start to read spiritual texts, whatever that is for you. This channel is about spirituality from the perspective of yoga or Eastern spiritual tradition. So maybe you're someone who's starting to get into the Yoga Sutra or into the Bhagavad Gita and you're starting to study it on your own. And you're asking yourself, should I be studying this with a teacher? And if I'm studying it with a teacher, should that teacher be a realized teacher? Now, the Upanishads are very clear on guidance for how to study when you're on the spiritual path. And first of all, it is a very good idea to study with a teacher if you're starting to get into the spiritual texts, because it's very easy to misinterpret text when you're on your own, even if you're reading commentary from, some great yogi. Perhaps it's still very easy to misinterpret the commentary with your own lenses and your own conditioning. So you do want to have a spiritual teacher that you might be working with who can interpret the teachings appropriately for you. So for me, I have a couple of spiritual teachers. Now my lineage is in the lineage of Self-Realization Fellowship. So my guru is Paramahansa Yogananda, who is no longer living. So clearly that can't be, he can't tell me whether I'm reading his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita correctly. So I would need and do need someone that I study it under. And there's several places that I go. One is either the Self-Realization Fellowship, where they have classes and they have the monks and the ministers there who give these classes, or I also have a couple of other places that I go for live teachers. One of them, just to put them out there for you, because I think they're really great resources, is Swami Sarvapriyananda from the New York Vedanta Society. He's an amazing living teacher, and I consider him to be an enlightened being, yet I don't know. No one can ever know if someone is totally enlightened or not, because that is an inner experience and an inner state. And the other person that I consider one of my teachers is Christopher Wallace, who is from the Tantrika Institute and teaches traditional Tantra. And his teachings are quite amazing as well. So I myself have a couple of different teachers that I study underneath when I'm studying spiritual texts. So number one, it is very important if you're getting into this stuff to have a live teacher, a living teacher who can help you interpret these spiritual texts. Number two, does that teacher need to be enlightened? Now, I just sort of alluded to that a moment ago because it's very hard to know whether a person is enlightened or not unless you yourself are enlightened. So as long as there's a resonance with the teacher and they seem to have some spiritual semblance about them, then they're probably okay to work with. But the Upanishads give 3 criteria for a spiritual teacher. So these, I think, are very, very important and should be taken into consideration when you're looking for someone to begin studying with. Number one, the Upanishads say that the teacher must be a full-time spiritual aspirant, meaning that they're not just teaching spirituality or doing spiritual things on the side. And as Swami Sarvapriyananda says, or has once said, they're not a business tycoon who's a guru on the side. And I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about when I say that, because there are a lot of spiritual gurus who are also big business tycoons as well. That is not a spiritual aspirant, and that would not be someone that you would consider a spiritual teacher. A spiritual teacher is someone who has been dedicated for many, many years to spirituality and to this search for the deeper mysteries and meaning of life. Number 2 is that the teacher needs to be a master in spiritual knowledge. So, for instance, I mentioned 2 people. I said I consider Swami Sarvapriyananda is one of my teachers, and he is a master of knowledge in Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta. So he has mastered all of the spiritual scriptures in that realm. And so he's a spiritual teacher of Advaita Vedanta. Christopher Wallace, on the other hand, is a master and has spent many years in study of the Tantra and of those scriptures. So he's a master of knowledge in those areas. So I'm going to look for the teacher for whatever it is that I'm interested in studying, right? So if I'm interested in Advaita Vedanta, I'm going to go to Swami Sarvapriyananda for me. If I'm interested in learning more about traditional Tantra or classical Tantra, I'm going to go to Christopher Wallace, and because he's studied those scriptures. So you want a person who has studied these scriptures in the formal sense, not someone who's just went into the New Age bookstore and channeled teachings off of the shelf and has become a self-proclaimed master of these things. They've actually studied the actual scripture and have had a lineage of teachers who have pass that knowledge down to them. So that's the second thing that you want to look for in a spiritual teacher. And then the final thing that the Upanishads say that you want to look for in a spiritual teacher is that a spiritual teacher has not been damaged by desire. And this is a very, very important thing, because if someone is a spiritual teacher and they're looking for personal gratification through their work, then that becomes very dangerous, and that's where we get all of the corruption that we've seen in spirituality, whether it's in the yoga or Buddhist tradition or in Judaism or Christianity. All of these spiritual paths have had scandal and spiritual impurities and spiritual abuse happen in them. So you want to be looking for a teacher who, as the Upanishads say, someone who has not been damaged by desire, and they must be free of personal gratification, and their deepest desire should be for the welfare of others. Right, so a quick recap of everything that I just said. If you are deepening your studies on the spiritual path, it is a very good idea to look for a spiritual teacher so that you don't misinterpret the sacred scripture through your own lens, and look for those 3 criteria in a spiritual teacher. Number 1, are they a full-time spiritual aspirant? Have they been on this path for a number of years, meaning probably decades? Number 2, are they a well-versed master of the scripture in the path that you're looking for? Has that knowledge been handed down to them through a lineage, and was it formal training that they got, formal studies? And then number 3, are they undamaged, as the Upanishads say, by desire? Right, so it's time for question of the day, and my question to you is, are you on the spiritual path and looking for a spiritual teacher? And do you have a spiritual teacher? Have you found a spiritual teacher? Go ahead and post your comments below. I'd love to continue this conversation with you. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. Be sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and remember to click on that notification bell so that you do get notified of any new videos that I put out. Be well, stay safe, stay healthy, and namaste.